All right, so this video is really focusing. We're going to be spending a lot of time this marking period back in the decimal Thuniverse. And we're going to be doing things with decimals that in the past we've done with whole numbers. We've rounded whole numbers. Now we're going to be rounding decimals. We've multiplied and divided whole numbers. We're now going to be multiplying and dividing decimals. So because we're going to be working so extensively with decimals, I really want to focus a little bit more on understanding the real meaning of what the decimal Thuniverse means. And so that's going to be the purpose of this video. What do the numbers after the decimal point really represent? And so the whole number universe starts in that ones place and goes to the left. Greater to the left, each place is 10 times greater. Whole numbers mean whole amounts. The smallest whole number you can have is 1. You can't get any smaller than 1. However, you can represent amounts that are less than 1 whole, and that's what our decimal Thuniverse is for. We know we have our T tenths, H hundredths, TH thousandths, and this is our decimal Thuniverse, and that's what we're going to be exploring a little bit more today. The decimal Thuniverse simply represents something less than one whole object. It's a part or a piece of a whole object. And another way to represent a part or a piece of a whole object other than with the decimal Thuniverse is with a fraction. So the easiest fraction for all people to understand, kids and adults, is simply the fraction 1/2. Because we can all picture what half a pizza looks like, half a cookie, half an apple. We can easily close our eyes and picture what a half represents. And so what we're going to do today is really focus on how the decimal Thuniverse compares to the fraction 1/2. Because if you can just get a general idea of, okay, is the decimal Thuniverse worth less than half? Is it worth exactly half? Or is it worth greater than half? That gives you a lot of really important information. So let's focus on a half and figure out what decimals are exactly equal, the same as a half. All right, let's start with our tenths place. We know our tenths is the first place value in the Thuniverse. Another way to say tenths, I wish that bottom part was gone and I don't really know how to make it gone there, is with a 10 as the denominator, tenths. And then we also have a picture of one whole object divided into 10 equal pieces. All of these three things say tenths. But if we want to know what's exactly half, let's start with the picture. If I cut this brownie into 10 equal pieces, if you want to eat half of that brownie, you're going to eat these pieces. And you can see if we counted them, that would be 5 out of the 10 pieces, 5/10. And another way to say 5/10 besides as a fraction is as a decimal, 5/10. All three of these things all mean 1/2. All right, let's look at hundredths. We could write it as a Thuniverse, going to the second place value, the hundredths place. We can also say hundredths by putting 100 at the bottom of the fraction as the denominator. Or we can look at one whole object divided into 100 equal pieces. Well, if I took this brownie and divided it into 100 pieces, if I wanted you to have exactly half, I would need to give you those pieces that are shaded. And if you were to count how many pieces are shaded, you could very quickly figure out that it would be 50 out of those 100 pieces is worth half. And another way to say 50 hundredths, 50 out of 100, would be with the decimal Thuniverse. 50 hundredths, a 5 in the tenths place, a 0 in the hundredths place. Let's take a look at thousandths. Same idea. Our Thuniverse would go to the third place value, to the thousandths place. We would have a denominator of 1,000. And again, you're going to have to use your imagination. That really does say 1,000. It's being cut off there. Or we would have one whole brownie divided into 1,000 tiny pieces. Now, if I wanted to give you half of this brownie, I would still be giving you the same amount, but I would need to give you 500 of these tiny thousandths in order for you to get half. And another way to say 500 thousandths instead of as a fraction would be as the decimal 500 thousandths. All right. So if we know that half is 5 out of 10, 5/10ths, half is 50 out of 100, 50 hundredths, and half is 500 out of 1,000 or 500 thousandths, we're going to use this information to guide our thinking. When you look at the decimal Thuniverse, start by thinking about what is exactly half and deciding if your amount is greater than or less than that, or maybe even equal. So, for example, let's figure out here this decimal Thuniverse. We have 67 hundredths. Well, if I only focus in on hundredths, because that's what place value we're focusing on, I know that 50 hundredths is exactly half. Well, another way to write 67 hundredths could be as a fraction like this, 67 hundredths. And I can very clearly see that 67 hundredths compared to 50 hundredths is absolutely greater. And that means that 67 hundredths is greater than half. Let's look at another one. This one is 0 and 4/10ths. 4/10ths. So I'm only going to focus on the tenths part of this one so I can get rid of those. And if I know that 5/10ths is exactly half, if I gave you 5 out of 10 apples, I'm giving you exactly half the apples. If I'm giving you 4/10ths or 4 out of 10, then that means we are very clearly less than half because 4 is less than the 5 needed to be exactly half. All right, here we have 39 hundredths. Again, we're focusing on just the hundredths. And I know that 50 out of 100, 50 hundredths is exactly half. But right now I have 39 hundredths. Well, if 50 is equal to half and I only have 39, I clearly have less than half. All right, let's look at this one. 612 thousandths. So this time I'm only going to think about the thousandths when it comes to half. I know that it takes 500 out of the 1,000 to be exactly half, to be equal to half. But I have 612 thousandths, which means I have greater than the 500 it takes to make exactly half. All right, another one. 5/10ths. I'm only going to focus on the tenths. And I know it takes 5/10ths, 5 out of 10 to make exactly half. And I have 5/10ths. Well, if 5/10ths is half and I have 5/10ths, well, ladies and gentlemen, 5/10ths is equal to 1/2. All right, it's time for you to try. And what I'm going to do is ask you to pause the video for each question, think about it, and then hit play to see if you're right. All right, here we go. All right, first one, 47 hundredths. Pause the video, decide if it's less than, equal to, or greater than half. All right, so 47 hundredths. If I can rewrite that as a fraction, it says 47 hundredths. And I'm comparing that to what I know half is in terms of hundredths. And since 50 hundredths is exactly half, and 47 is less than 50, that means that 47 hundredths is less than half. All right, let's try this one. Pause the video. All right, this one says 8/10ths. Well, I know another way to write 8/10ths as a fraction. And if I look very carefully, I can see that 5/10ths is exactly half. So if I have 8/10ths, then that is obviously greater than half. Here's the next one. 513 thousandths. All right, well, this one could be written as 513 thousandths. And if I compare that to what needs to be exactly half, 500 thousandths is exactly half. So 513 thousandths would be greater than that. So it would be greater than half. All right, last practice one. 2/10. Another way to write 2/10 is as a fraction, 2 out of 10 or 2/10. And if I look at what I know about tenths, I know that 5/10 is exactly half. So if I only have 2/10, I am clearly less than half. All right. So hopefully you will start to look at the decimal Thuniverse differently. It's not just a bunch of digits in the Thuniverse, it has a meaning. And always ask yourself, is that decimal Thuniverse worth less than half, equal to half, or greater than half?